Have you been charged for parking too long in a private car park?
The legal challenge to charging for parking in private car parks.
Personally, I think the way that this company goes about raising revenue is abhorrent, and it should be outlawed. It shouldn't be allowed.
Revealing the stories that matter closer to home. That's tonight's Inside Out. Hello, I'm in Corby in Northamptonshire. Welcome to the programme. Now, unlike the police and local authorities, companies running car parks on private land aren't allowed to issue fines or penalties, but they can charge you if you stay too long in their car parks. And now there's a legal challenge to decide if those charges are fair. Let's face it, getting a parking fine can really ruin your day, and most of us will have had one at one time or another. While local authority traffic wardens and police can fine motorists for parking illegally in public spaces, on private land, it's a different story.
What you and I can be charged for parking in a private car park has become a huge legal fight, with a motorist from Chelmsford taking it all the way to the highest courts in the country. Just over a year ago, business owner Barry Beavis was heading off on a shopping trip.
When you drive into a shopping centre car park, you're concentrating on the shopping. You're not reading the small print on a sign. Chelmsford's just grown and grown so much, there just never seems to be enough car park spaces. It was just a regular trip to Staples for me. It's something I do probably 2 or 3 times a month. I get all my printing and flyers printed at Staples. I often visit the retail park, the car park, because it's so local and handy for me.
But Barry had no idea that a simple shopping trip would result in a potentially groundbreaking legal case that could have massive implications for all of us.
Now, this sign says that anyone is allowed to park here for free, providing you don't stay longer than 2 hours. Barry parked his car and went off to do some shopping, completely unaware of the legal complexities surrounding the running of private car parks.
Private operators aren't allowed to issue fines, but they can charge motorists who stay too long in a car park. Now, that may sound like the exact same thing, but it's an important legal distinction. Parking on private land is covered by civil law. Charges made are meant to cover loss suffered by the parking company, rather than being a penalty.
This one is run by the UK's largest operator, called Parking Eye. They run 900 car parks. They pay the owner of the land a fee in return for operating the parking. Parking Eye then makes its money by charging motorists who stay too long. And they make a lot of money. Last year, their turnover was £14 million. Now, when Barry returned from his shopping trip, he'd no idea about any of this and never heard of the company Parking Eye. But that was about to change, because it turned out Barry had overstayed his welcome by 52 minutes. He went home and thought nothing more about it. Well, several weeks later, Barry received a letter in the post. It showed photographs of his car and a demand to pay £85. Barry was not impressed, so I imagine when that came through the door and you opened it, you weren't too happy.
I was shocked to receive a parking charge notice. I didn't realise that I'd overstayed, and it's incredibly intimidating. It's set out like a fine, but of course private companies can't fine you. It's just an invoice.
Why didn't you pay it?
I searched online, and most of the forums that you can find online suggest that you can ignore these things and the company can't take any real action against you, and it has to go away.
Parking Eye didn't want to be interviewed, but told us that they conform to the British Parking Association's Code of Practice and specifically avoid using any language that could be construed as a fine or penalty. David Carrad runs the British Motorist Protection Association. His website has helped hundreds of motorists like Barry to challenge parking charges they think are unfair.
David, can you tell me, what is it you don't like about the way that Parking Eye make their money?
Well, if you look at the sign there, it says £85 for staying over 2 hours. It's a blunt instrument. Okay, it doesn't take any account of how much money people spend in the shops. All it does is measure people coming in and out. Furthermore, Parking Eye, that is the only money they make. There are no charges for this car park, it's free. So they spend all the money on the cameras. They pay £1,000 a week to the landowner for this particular car park. There's an incentive on them to issue as many parking charge notices as possible. And if you look at this car park here, this retail park with 12 shops in it, 2 hours is not long enough for people to get round, do a few bits of shopping and get something to eat. It's a completely arbitrary restriction.
But the argument would be that if you just had no parking restrictions here, people would abuse it, they'd park here all day, they'd go to work, and the shops would lose out.
That is quite possible. There does need to be some kind of control or enforcement. There used to be barriers here where people would pay on exit or get a token or whatever it is from the shops. They took that away and introduced this system because it makes them more money.
I often come here to use the gym. I'm a member of the gym, and then I have coffee once a week with my friends, and I do my weekly shop. So I guess that it was one of those days that I went over the 3 hours.
Naomi Davis is another motorist who felt intimidated by Parking Eye. She says the first she knew that she'd outstayed her welcome at this Cambridge car park was when she received a county court summons.
It said that I owed monies for an infringement of the parking rules, and it was asking me for £150, and if I didn't pay I'd get a county court judgment against me.
But this is disputed by Parking Eye, who say at least 4 letters requesting payment are sent out before any county court claims are issued.
Naomi is a genealogist by profession, so she's a bit of a dab hand at internet research. She decided to find out exactly who owns the land. So how did you go about tracking down who owns this piece of land here?
What I did first was look on the internet and look on old newspaper reports to try and find out when the Beehive Centre had last been sold. And I found an article and I followed the internet trail through to find out who managed the land, I think on behalf of a pension fund.
So what did they say to you when you actually got to speak to them?
I explained that I was a genuine customer of the Beehive Centre, and I went to all the shops and I was a member of the gym, and I think they agreed with me that I was a genuine customer and that it was unfair to charge me in that way.
So did they then agree to drop the charge?
They did eventually, yes. They agreed, the management company agreed that I was a genuine customer and that I really shouldn't have been charged in that way.
But a long process to get to that, Naomi. I mean, it must have been
Oh, it's horrible, very stressful. I mean, to have a county court summons just for a small oversight when parking, it was scary.
But Barry Beavis's case did go to court and he lost. But he's now off to the Court of Appeal. Some of the country's leading judges must decide whether private companies like Parking Eye can issue what effectively amounts to a fine or penalty. Their ruling could have important implications for all of us.
If the judgment were to go against us, we think that would be not only a bad thing for motorists as far as this sort of situation is concerned, but if they find that there's commercial justification for penalties, you'll end up having to pay £50 if you spill gravy on a tablecloth in a restaurant or something like that. It opens the floodgates for a whole load of ridiculous penalties, and we say that can't happen.
Parking Eye say their charges are commercially justified and are not punitive. But Barry Beavis disagrees. He thinks the charges are unfair and says he's fighting on as a matter of principle.
Personally, I think the way that this company goes about raising revenue is abhorrent, and it should be outlawed. It shouldn't be allowed. The reason I'm doing this is because I imagine what it would be like for my mother-in-law to get one of these letters through the door, and how upsetting and distressing that would be for her, and how intimidated she would feel. And that's just not right.
Well, if there's something you think we should be looking into, you can get me on Twitter at David_InsideOut, and my email address is david.whiteley@bbc.co.uk. You're watching Inside Out for the East of England here on BBC One.